Hi, I'm Max Porterfield. I'm President and CEO of Callinex Mines. We're advancing very high-grade, copper-rich VMS discoveries in the Flin district of Manitoba, which is renowned for these type of deposit styles with over a century of historic production that we're looking to extend with our discoveries at our flagship Pine Bay property. We trade on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the ticker CNX, as well as the OTCQX in the United States under the ticker CLLXF. And just some forward-looking information. I will make statements about what we're looking to accomplish in the future. So here's some legal disclosure around those statements. We've got a long history of exploration in the Flin district of northern Manitoba. The company actually dates back to 1927 when a gentleman by the name of Jack Callinan staked a significant land package in northern Manitoba. And throughout history, there's been a number of significant discoveries, most notably the 777 mine was discovered on the company's claims. 777 was the last flagship mine that operated up until just recently in 2022 in the town of Flin, which we'll go over a bit today. And then Callinex is a spin out of that parent organization, spun out in 2011, renewed focus back on these deposits in northern Manitoba in 2014. And since that time, we've consistently advanced through a number of discoveries going back to 2020, the property at Pine Bay. And we're also backstopped by a number of large base metal resources in the Maritimes in Eastern Canada, with our Nash Creek deposit in New Brunswick and our Point Leeming deposit in Newfoundland, Canada. Just quickly on share structure, we're a very tightly held company in terms of management. We've got a large position, over 20%. Myself as the single largest filed shareholder of the company. We have just 18.8 million shares outstanding, no debt on the balance sheet. We're fully financed with the recent financing that we've completed, and that's going to fully fund our 5,000-meter drilling campaign that's underway that we just started a couple days ago. In terms of our team, I'm joined by a number of very accomplished gentlemen with a track record of exploration success, as well as building mines of these exact deposit styles in this area of the world. Our technical team has been credited with the discovery of 3 of the 4 largest mines in the history of Flin and nearly half of them. Again, Flin dates back a century of production, and there's been over 32 mines in the camp's history. So again, these gentlemen have a significant portion of those discoveries, and the discoveries that we're making, I think, again, are going to continue to be the future of Flin moving forward, and that's our ultimate goal. Wazlowski is a member of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. Largest discovery in the Flin area was Trout Lake, that operated for 30 years and really carried the town after the original Flin ore body. That was the giant 60 million tonner that kickstarted the town was unwinding. Jim Piquel and Alan Valls are both Bill Dennis Award winners, which is like an award given for the largest discovery, most significant discovery in North America in any given year. For the 777 mine for Jim, and then the Lawler mine, which is another flagship mine that's operated by Hudbay in the Snow Lake area of the Flin Greenstone Belt. And then also Peter Jones is a former CEO, founding CEO of Hudbay. He financed the initial construction of 777 and oversaw the initial discovery and development of the Lawler mine. So again, he's built some of the biggest mines in Flin a mining engineer by background, but also has a significant entrepreneurial background as well. And then J.J. O'Donnell, our exploration manager, is the former senior exploration manager or VP exploration for the Howard's Pass deposit in Yukon, one of the largest undeveloped zinc deposits in the world. And he's actually former senior mine geologist at the 777 mine. So our team's got a significant track record of success in the Flin district and beyond. And again, we're focused on our Pine Bay property, where we've got emerging high-grade discoveries. The most advanced is our Rainbow deposit, where we announced a maiden resource, which I'll go over with everyone momentarily here. And again, we're in Flin Flon benefits from existing infrastructure. There's a mill that sits idle on care and maintenance that shut down in 2022. And again, that's got a capacity over 5,000 tons per day. And that's a unique opportunity to be restarted for the community of Flin and that's owned and on care and maintenance by Hudbay, which is the operator in the area over the past century. So in terms of our most advanced discovery, we announced a maiden resource at our Pine Bay property last year that was 5.7 million tons of roughly 3% copper. Rainbow is the most significant resource. As I mentioned, this is a discovery that we made in 2020, and I'll show you a bit more of that as we move forward. Rainbow is 4.7 million tons. Majority of that is in the indicated category, 3.44 million tons, and that's nearly 3.6% copper equivalent. Of the 3.59% copper equivalent, 3.14% of that is copper. So again, that's very, very high grade. On a global basis, the average grade of mined copper around the world is less than 0.5% today. So the grades that we're hitting at Pine Bay really rival some of the highest grades in the world. And really the comparison that you get oftentimes outside of Flin Flon is going to be in the DRC or the Congo, where you have some very high grade deposits, but the geopolitical risk profile is a little bit different operating there than certainly in central Canada where we're operating. So this is an area map. Flin Flon sits right here where you have the 777 mine and these deposits that sit in this area. The Pine Bay property is where all of our deposits sits. We benefit from a mineral lease that's outlined in black there. That's advanced permitting. You only need your environmental license to go into production there. So this is held from a historic permitting that goes back to the 60s, where there's a historic shaft on site for the Pine Bay deposit, which is 1 million tons of the 5.7 million tons that I outlined earlier. Of course, you see where Rainbow sits right here off to the west. The project also benefits from direct road access to Flin Flon. It's a 30-minute drive by existing road access, and there's a very large hydroelectric power line on site that you can see that goes right over the property. So again, cheap, low-cost, clean power to potentially mine very high-grade deposits is going to lead to one of the cleanest copper concentrates out there based upon all that. So we're quite eager for that. And we've also recently announced that we've acquired and doubled the size of the Pine Bay property to the north, which you can see through staking over here and through the an option agreement for the Alberts Lake project, which is now the extension of Pine Bay. The reason for that is it encompasses the largest felsic rock package in the entire Flin Flon greenstone belt now. And the yellow rocks, which are the felsic rocks on this image, they're the host rock to 90% of the mines. So if you look in Flin Flon, there's a tiny sliver of yellow rocks right here that hosts that 90 million tons. Here's the small package of felsics that hosts Trout Lake, which is over 20 million tons. And again, the expansive Baker Patent felsic packages that's known that our Pine Bay encompasses is what's hosts these emerging discoveries. And we believe many more discoveries to come with the recently consolidated ground as we now encompass the majority of the entirety of that felsic package. The only thing we don't control is this small area right here, which is controlled by Hudbay, which, as I mentioned, was the operator. And this is on a joint venture deal with the Japanese conglomerate Marubeni. So we're in good company as we continue to advance these discoveries here at Pine Bay. This is an aerial view showing the topography of the area. These deposits sit along this kind of growth fault corridor in sequence. And this is with a Rainbow deposit. Rainbow comes within 90 meters of the surface. So this is a ramp accessible deposit and is one of the most shallow discoveries within the past 30 years in Flin Flon, within 30 kilometers of the town. And then Pine Bay sits right over here underneath the lake, and many deposits are coincidence with these lakes. That's part of the topography and how these are formed. But again, Rainbow's here, and about 800 meters away is where you have the Rainbow deposit. Between the two, you have the historic shaft, and you can see the cutout right here for the hydroelectric power line, as I mentioned. Here's a plan view showing the same thing. Rainbow is located right here. You can see the drilling that we've done over Rainbow. Here's that Pine Bay deposit. We've got a brand new discovery called Descendent that we're about to be following up on with a step out drill hole right here. And I'll talk about Descendant in more detail in a moment. And we'll also be testing these other target areas, Poseidon, target area Raw, and target area Odin, that really sit in excellent geology, as I mentioned before, and they're multifaceted exploration targets backed by, of course, geology, geochemistry, and multiple geophysical data sets, of which is a recent MT survey that I'll show you in a bit here that went over this area. So this is the Rainbow deposit. I'm showing you a long section. As I mentioned, Rainbow comes within 90 meters of the surface. This is the 100-meter level right here. Is open at depth. Again, this is 4.7 million tons of over 3% copper. Also carries gold, silver, and zinc as byproducts. Is one of the largest maiden resources put out in the camp's history, and we'll quantify that in a bit. So again, this is drilled out to the indicated category. We're going to be looking to advance Rainbow in the near term with an advanced exploration permit that we're looking to file, and that allows you to ramp down to the deposit and take a bulk sample and do underground exploration as well. So again, that's the Rainbow deposit, discovered in 2020, and we announced the maiden resource in July of last year. And here's, again, very steeply dipping and plunging. As you can see, just about 80 degrees. Now, this is the Descendent discovery that I highlighted earlier. Descendent sits on an area of the property that's always been targeted for a very large deposit. And that's based upon the alteration system or the volcanic plumbing that's been mapped at surface in this area. Placer Dome, when they explored the Pine Bay property, one of the areas they were quite keen on was this area of the property, and they had a target for 30 million tons. 30 million tons would be the second largest discovery in the camp's history to kind of quantify size behind the giant Flin deposit. And then Inmet followed up, and they had targeted 20 million tons on the property they favored this area of the property when they explored it in the mid-1990s, just after Placer Dome. The focus was always that the large alteration package mapped at surface was a precursor to a large deep-seated deposit on the property. And really what we're starting to drum up with the Descendant discovery is that Placer Dome and Inmet both just simply didn't drill deep enough when they explored the property looking for that giant VMS system. To give you a kind of comparison, the alteration package that surrounds this Descendant deposit discovery is 10 times roughly the size of the alteration package that you see about Rainbow. And Rainbow, again, is the 4.7 million tons open at depth today. So there's a significant opportunity here with this discovery. Just to point a couple of holes out, there was no deep drilling on this below the 700-meter level when we took over the property and began exploring for these type of deposits in 2014. We actually deepened a Placer Dome hole in 2016, and that had a very high-grade interval, a wide interval, of 0.7 copper, 1.6 gram per ton gold, almost 2-ounce silver, and over 5.5% zinc. We then deepened an Inmet hole along a strike to the south. They also didn't know where the productive horizon was, and we hit the edge of something here with that 0.37 meters of VMS mineralization. We then raised a bunch of capital and drilled these step-out holes below it. The system was there, but the mineralization wasn't there. And then we followed up with hole 24, and that's when we hit about 2.6 meters of over 3.5% copper equivalent. That's high-grade material. And then into the campaign in 2017 right here, but weren't able to replicate that. And we took a break, and then that's when we went to Eastern Canada, had a bunch of success, returned to Pine Bay, and then led with Rainbow discovery. And after we hit Rainbow, another discovery called Alchemist, and you see how Pine Bay sits, we had a reinterpretation of what needed to be accomplished here at Descendent, and that's when we last year in December drilled a 250-meter step out vertically below that 24 and hit 4 lenses of massive sulfides over very wide intervals. And so it's significant, the widths that we're hitting, and the metal distribution indicates that we're at the top of something. We're hitting more zinc gold dominant mineralization, which is what you also see on the edge of these VMS systems, like at Rainbow. At the top of Rainbow, you see the similar grade distribution as well as a mineral distribution in terms of the more zinc gold dominant portion of the system. We've since drilled a step out. We're able to replicate those grades in significant widths here with 112 wedge 1. And so what we're planning to do in this drilling campaign is a significant 300-meter step out vertically below into the north of DSC 111, the discovery hole into Descendent, to get into the more proximal part of that system. And if that is successful, we believe that we're on a significant discovery, and with plans then to immediately step out to begin building a significant resource based upon, again, positive results from this upcoming step out drilling hole campaign that we'll be doing here on Descendant that we've just kickstarted. Now, in the meantime, this is also I want to show you the MT results over Descendant, as well as it highlighted another target area that we're drilling called Target Area Poseidon that I alluded to earlier when I showed everyone the plan view of this. And so again, this is the MT data. MT is used to map the alteration, which would lead into these massive sulfides, or these VMS deposits that carry the high-grade copper. And so you see that correlation with the MT data here, this resistivity low is what they call it, and how it leads to this mineralization that we're hitting with Descendant, and it again indicates that Descendant should continue at depth. And what has also been highlighted with MT is a significant resistivity low anomaly that you can see right here. And that is coincident with airborne geophysical data, electromagnetic data, with this VTEM anomaly at surface, as well as a surface anomaly, again, that we tried to test and look to test the wrong area of that. So we're again following it up with this hole right now, and that's the hole that we're drilling underway to kickstart this campaign, is to test, again, Poseidon, which is the target along strike to the north of Rainbow, that's supported by multiple geophysical data sets, geochemical support, as well as excellent geology and the very limited drilling here. And again, the support that we're going to have as we step out here on Descendant. We're also testing some targets to the south. This is target area Odin, that's supported by multiple data sets as well. And then target area Raw, which is a long strike from the Pine Bay deposit to the south as well. And just to sum things up in terms of the presentation, before we dive into more of the interview portion here, these are all the mines of consequence in Manitoba's history in the Flin, Flon, Greenstone belt. In red, you have initial reserves and then added reserves in blue. I should note that the Flin Flon deposit is truncated. This goes down to 30 million tons. The Flin Flon deposit was over 60 million tons. And in terms of where we're at today, on the property, we're sitting with a, again, 5.7 million ton resource between the Rainbow and the Pine Bay deposit. And that's significant in terms of the camp's history. And we're looking to go well and above that with this year's exploration campaign, focus on making and confirming a big discovery at Descendant, like we discussed, and also looking to replicate with another discovery near surface at target area Poseidon, Raw, or Odin, that will then again put us in rare air as we look to go over the 10 million ton mark through further exploration this year. And then, of course, we'll lead to step out to define that. So again, very excited with what we've accomplished to date, but even more excited what we're looking to accomplish this year with the drill bit turning here eminently right now, with the results to follow up here in Q4 this year. So again, thanks so much for taking the time to hear about us, and look forward to carrying the conversation.
Max, thank you for being here. Could you tell us about yourself and your career?
Certainly. So I'm an undergraduate of Texas Tech University. I was born and raised in Texas, and then started off my career at U.S. Global Investors in San Antonio. U.S. Global Investors, which also they're also a shareholder of Callinex, is a boutique asset manager that specializes in natural resource investing. So I had a number of roles there at that organization. Was there about the first 5 years of my career before immigrating to Canada in 2012, where I worked at Uranium Energy Corp, which is a really one of the premier uranium companies in North America, as well as what's now Gold Mining Inc. And then took over Callinex in 2014, where we immediately focused on VMS exploration in northern Manitoba, and then have since oversaw the expansion of the assets into the Maritimes, and of course made these discoveries here at Pine Bay and built the existing team that we have here at Callinex.
When did you join Callinex, and what attracted you to Callinex?
So I joined the company in 2014. And what attracted me to the company, I've always really looked to have the best mentors in my career. When you surround yourself with successful people, that I've always the success kind of brushes off on you. There's a lot of hard work that goes to that, but success kind of breeds more success. And so, having the mentor I had at U.S. Global Investors with Mike Maslowski, and then early in my career also with the Miradani of Uranium Energy Corp, the opportunity to work with an esteemed geologist of the caliber of Mike Maslowski is what attracted me. Mike was the chairman and founder of Callinex, as I mentioned, his track record before, and then the portfolio that Callinex possessed, that was really a diamond in the rough. It was underappreciated, and it had a lot of potential, with the opportunity that, again, the mill in Flin Flon was eventually going to need additional feed, and wanting to realize that opportunity. That's ultimately what attracted me to Callinex, is, again, people and the caliber of the portfolio that existed within the company at the time.
What would you consider to be your greatest achievements?
The discoveries at Pine Bay certainly are the greatest achievements, and those achievements are underway. It's still early in that process, but again, when you take over something, have the vision to make these discoveries, and then seeing that vision through and actually executing, hitting, and then quantifying that is certainly what ultimately is a success in this business. And now it's just scaling that success up, and really growing the asset into a tier 1 asset, and really a tier 1 jurisdiction on the backdrop of what I see as really a big cycle here we're going to have for base metals in particular.
How many shares do you own of Callinex, and how meaningful is it to your net worth?
It's a significant portion of my net worth. I own over 1 million shares of Callinex. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but just over 1 million. I think that you've got to be passionate about what you do in life, and I think my position in Callinex certainly speaks for the passion that I have personally for the discoveries and what we're on to, and kind of reaching that ultimate goal, that you want to be aligned to that success. And certainly I'd say I'm definitely aligned to that success, being the largest shareholder today.
So then you talked about the management team, but how have you built the management team at Callinex? And perhaps most of the executives were already in place where you joined, or could you tell us about that?
Actually, the only member of the team that is still with Callinex, that was with Callinex today outside of the board, which it would be Mike, and Mike was chairman of the board, retired from the board a couple of years ago. But everybody else on the team has historically had experience in the Flin Flon district, but not been a part of Callinex, with the exception of JJ, who actually had previously been CEO of Callinex. But when JJ joined Callinex, he was back with the Selon Group, as I mentioned before. So really the focus on immediately building the team was to find the guys that have the technical skill set on the various aspects of exploration to execute, and then also be emotionally tied to the experience. I think that, again, you've got to want to wake up and be excited about what you're doing, and having that tie to the community, I think, is a big driver for certainly the members of the team, realizing that, hey, they don't need to work at the part of the career that they're in. They do it because they're passionate about it, and they're excited about it, and they see the outcome they can accomplish. So with that being said, immediately look to bring on Jim Pickell and JJ O'Donnell from the geologic background, being really key, their expertise in that, aside from Mike's, with the recent discoveries. And discoveries actually working at those mines are very key. Actually, JJ, as a second generation exploration geologist at the property, his father was actually exploration geologist at Pine Bay when Pine Bay was first being developed in the 1960s. And then and then also Alan Valls, from a geophysicist standpoint, geophysics is a critical part of the exploration tool set, and certainly finding these base metal deposits in the Flin Flon Greenstone Belt. And Alan and all of the members of the team, I would say the one thing that sets them apart is they're constantly adapting, and they're constantly evolving and constantly learning, and they're not ever tied to one ultimate kind of mindset. And I think that's really critical for exploration, and what sets them apart each individually from a lot of people you meet in the industry. And then we brought on Peter as we put on, we're looking to announce the resource at Pine Bay, because again, that's where Peter's skill set, and that's really the next skill set for the company as these discoveries evolve over time, is on the engineering front, and extracting that material from the earth is obviously a critical part of the process, critical part of the development, the permitting, the financing expertise that Peter also has is key. So again, as the company evolves and needs different skill sets, you just try to, recruit those that are going to be driven and have the experience to deliver what their skill set is that ultimately fits the goals of the company.
Fantastic. That was a good overview of the management team and how each and every one's skill sets complement each other. So, who are the key shareholders of Callinex Mines?
Well, outside myself and the rest of the team, we do have a number of institutions like Arbiter Partners, for example, is a value-centric hedge fund out of New York that has supported the company through numerous rounds of financing. SSI is a family office, for example, out of Europe that's been supportive of the financing. U.S. Global Investors, which I mentioned, was a company that I worked for as a shareholder of the company. And then we've got a lot of family office support out of Europe that are big supporters of the company historically. Notably, the Savelli family out of Switzerland has been a big supporter of not just Callinex, but actually going back to Granges and the Trout Lake discovery. So again, we've had a lot of support out of Europe and really appreciate that, quite frankly.
I mean, you have had quite a bit of selling pressure. Do you have an explanation for who has been behind that?
Who's been buying that is been certainly a lot of those relationships that I've just kind of mentioned in terms of those family offices. I can tell you that, my own family has been supported and, added to their own personal positions down to this levels. And so again, it's been high net wealth, some funds in certainly those family offices that already have existing positions that have been adding to that. So again, been very grateful for the support out there as we've kind of obviously eaten through some larger selling that we've endured through fund redemptions that are just part of the business.
Okay. So there's no particular seller that's been selling and perhaps is exhausting his.
No, there's certainly been a couple of large sellers that I mentioned, kind of alluded to just now that are exiting, and that's just part of, any investor has a certain investment horizon. We had one large investor, for example, private equity fund that was unwinding its position, and so again, there have been a couple of those instances, which has kind of certainly impacted the share price over the past several months. But again, once we kind of eat through that, I think there's not going to be any of those big blocks ahead of us as we advance with news flow to come.
You have not so many, but yeah, you have 1.84 million warrants. What's the exercise price and the expiry date on these?
So the expiry dates are going to vary across the warrants just because those warrants come from numerous different financings, but the average price on that of all the 1.84 million is $3.33. So about 3 times where we're at. There was some warrants that were granted. The most recent that I've got a $2 strike, but the rest of them are priced significantly higher than that.
And are any warrants expiring this year, or are all they set for next and also 2026?
There would have been a round of warrants that have expired for this year, and then there'll be another that'll expire, I would imagine, about roughly 8 months. They come from when we've done our financing, so there'll be like an annual roll-off because we typically have done a financing annually over the past several years.
So then, how much cash and working capital do you currently have, and how much will the 5,000 meter drilling program cost you?
The cash on the balance sheet is just over $2 million. As I mentioned, we just completed that financing just several weeks ago, and that's going to fund the 5,000 meter drilling campaign that's outlined for $1 million. And so the 5,000 meters will test a step out on Descendent, as I mentioned, and then test target area Poseidon, Odin, and Ra. And then there'll be a little bit of meters for follow-up thereafter as well.
And what's your all-in drilling cost per meter?
The all-in drilling cost per meter is roughly $200 a meter on this campaign.
$200, Canadian or US?
Canadian.
That's pretty competitive.
Certainly it is. Yeah, we've got an excellent relationship with our driller. We also keep in mind we don't have any camp costs. So there's a lot of opportunities that really revolve around operating in an area like Flin, in that we own homes in the community. Everybody commutes to and from the site every morning. We have the ability to tap into the local drillers in the community. In fact, I've got a real strong relationship with one of the drillers named Cooney. He's been on the drill for a couple of discoveries we've had. He's a second generation driller out of Flin. So no, there's a lot of advantages to operating within that mining community, with obviously the human capital that's there, the synergies that are there in terms of being able to drive to site every day, just to commute to work in Vancouver. No different, actually. Your commute to work in Vancouver would be longer than trying to commute to work out at Pine Bay. So yeah, it's an ideal setup in that way, and it allows us to compress costs and expand those exploration dollars to get more meterage done.
That's good. So in other words, yeah, your drilling cost is quite low. And what's the quarterly G&A burn rate at?
We're burning roughly just over $100,000 a month in terms of G&A when we're drilling.
So if we move then to the Pine Bay project, what royalties are there on the project?
So the royalties vary on claim to claim. There's an underlying NSR on the mineral lease, but the entire property is put together through a significant amount of different transactions. There was basically three main transactions to put together, I would say 80% of the land package. But with each underlying main transaction, there were historic underlying royalties that are there. So long story short, they vary. They're not excessive. For example, the royalty on Alberts Lake was just 1.5% royalty, which we can buy back for 0.5%, in terms of that big land package to the north as well. So there's no major inhibiting royalties, but there are a number of royalties through various claims on the property.
What do you think on average that would make up?
Well, that's the thing, is they're all in a different, they all kind of do have a different royalty package, except for the mineral lease, which I mentioned has an underlying royalty of a couple percent NSR, and then that's the main royalty under the mineral lease, and each claim package around it has something different.
Okay, but is it generally lower than 3%? NSR?
Yes, it's definitely lower than 3% on average, yes.
Could you give us an explanation on what a volcanogenic massive sulfide VMS deposit is, and what characterizes such deposits?
So a VMS deposit is a subsea floor volcanic activity. Imagine if you looked on National Geographic and you saw a black smoker where you see the pluming on the seafloor. That would be an example of a VMS-style system in modern day context. So what we're looking for is subsea floor volcanic activity, where that volcanic activity, that system was active, and while it was active, it was depositing through the sedimentation process of bringing that material from deep sea underneath the seafloor up to surface, and then depositing that on the ocean floor. And so what we're looking for as we explore is for that period of time within that larger volcanic system, that volcano was active and erupting, displacing those minerals on the ocean floor. And of course, these occur in clusters, and that's what makes VMS camps worldwide, is where you find one, you find many more, just like you'd find if you look for this subsea floor volcanic activity, where you have multiple vents that are bringing that material to the surface. And so each period of time that system was active could potentially displace a new massive sulfide lens, and that's why you can see them occurring stacking clusters would be at a time where the system was active, as the volcano was erupting, displacing that material at surface, and then there'll be a quieter period of time where you'll see other sediments, bed on top of that, and then you can get another lens that'll reoccur when the system reactivates and the volcano's erupting again. No different than when you see a volcano erupting today and spewing lava. That would be like that new layer being displaced at surface that we're looking for.
And in terms of size and grades and also metal distribution, could you give us some sort of intervals?
So VMS systems are going to be much higher grade than you'll see at some of the pore-free systems. So in terms of grades for VMS systems, you can have 2% to 6% copper, and then you can also have them more zinc dominant. So there's different distributions. Rainbow, for example, is much more of a copper dominant VMS system, just like 777 was a copper dominant system compared to like a Lawler. 777, for example, ran about 2.25% copper and about 1.8 gram per ton gold, whereas Rainbow's averaging over 3% copper and about 0.35 gram per ton gold. So again, these systems have various grades and they are polymetallic. So each VMS deposit will typically have copper, zinc, lead, gold, and silver. And in Flin Flon, we get the most excited about the copper, gold dominant ones. And then in terms of zonation within these systems, when you're closer to the vent or the hottest portion of the VMS or the volcanic event, that's where you're going to get the copper-rich portion of the VMS system. And then as you move further away from the heat source or the vent, that's where you get more of the zinc gold dominant portion of your VMS deposit. So that's kind of the metal distribution and how they sit across these deposit styles around the world.
And in terms of tonnage?
They can range anywhere from 50,000 tons on a VMS occurrence, all the way up to 60 million tons in Flin Flon's case. So they do vary. The big ones are obviously the ones that you're looking for, given that they carry a significant amount of material in terms of a small area. So the dimensions are quite small, which makes them a bit more challenging to find than a target that's much larger in size, but it could be much lower grade.
Your Rainbow deposit. Let's talk about. Maybe we can flip to where we see the deposit. To what depth does it extend to, and also from what depth does it start, and also what's the average width of mineralization?
So we start from the 90-meter level down to the 900-meter level, open at depth, and then the average width of mineralization is 8 meters. In these VMS systems, your average widths are typically about 2.5 to 8 to 10 meters wide. I mean, you get these blowout intervals throughout these systems where you'll have a section of it's 50 meters wide. For example, we've got wide intervals within Rainbow, but on average, in VMS, you're looking from 2.5 to 10 meters.
And what mining methods would probably be suitable for Rainbow?
Well, that's yet to be determined. But in terms of Rainbow, you more than likely are looking to ramp access to a ramp. And that is something that's being developed right now as we're advancing to publish or to submit for an AEP later this year. But the exact underground mining method is yet to be determined because we're a bit early on that.
What are you looking to submit for? An AEP?
Advanced Exploration Permit.
Okay, advanced. Okay, so
the
the bulk
point of the permitting process before you get your full-blown environmental license. What the AEP allows you to do is allows you to ramp down to the deposit and take a bulk sample. And then you can also have underground drill platforms. And then that bulk sample would be significant in terms of then getting it processed at a local mill or concentrator in advancing the development work on the property.
So you know what you would be looking to mine 20,000 tons or something like that, and test and do the metallurgical test work on that.
The bulk sample size yet to be determined, but you're looking anywhere between 10 to 50,000 tons.
And how well defined is Rainbow in terms of remaining exploration upside?
There's I think tremendous amount of exploration upside at depth on Rainbow. Again, Rainbow remains open below depth at the 900 meter level. Geochemistry, of course, geology and the geophysics indicate that Rainbow will continue at depth. We've prioritized Descendent in terms of deep exploration over Rainbow, given the size of the alteration system around Descendant. And again, the alteration is typically a key indicator towards the size of the correlating deposit. And the alteration system at Descendant is roughly 8 to 10 times larger than the alteration around Rainbow. The widths of mineralization that we're hitting at Descendant are significantly wider than the widths of mineralization you're hitting at Rainbow. So when you look at near-term exploration that we're doing at depth, we're favoring doing that exploration work at Descendant and other areas of the property to hit another near-surface discovery as we advance Rainbow through the earlier stage permitting and development work that are necessary to advance those assets.
So then, in this drilling program, you have two other discoveries, Pine Bay and Alchemist. Could you give us an overview of these targets and also explain why you're not pursuing them in this program?
The Pine Bay deposit is about 1 million tons that sits. And just for the sake of this presentation, I took those slides out, but the Pine Bay deposit sits right here. That's 1 million tons. We've not really prioritized, there has been like 1 or 2 holes at depth on the Pine Bay deposit. We've prioritized other targets that we feel have potential to be a much larger outcome over Pine Bay. And then in terms of Alchemist, it's really, again, prioritizing the depth of where Alchemist is relative to the widths that we're hitting compared to other opportunities on the property. And the focus, obviously, Descendant taking the precedence over that. And then Odin, Poseidon, and Ra, these all have the potential to have another near-surface deposit that could be essentially, you make another near-surface discovery, you can double your initial throughput on production profile by 2 sister deposits going into production in tandem to each other. And right now, if you look at Rainbow and Pine Bay, mining those sequentially, you're looking at an initial production profile of roughly 1,500 tons per day. So if we have another near-surface one like Poseidon, Target Area Odin, or Ra, then you can theoretically double that initial throughput as you're developing a much larger, not to say these aren't going to be large on their own, but a significant discovery at Descendant at depth.
And Pine Bay and Alchemist, so they more or less start from surface or 100 meters below surface?
In terms of the Pine Bay deposit is right near the lake bottom, just where I showed you earlier.
Okay, so Pine Bay is at the lake bottom, and the lake, is like 10 meters or 30 meters deep?
It's a very shallow lake. Yes. Yeah, the initial discovery hole on the Alchemist, again, we hit at about 700 meters vertical depth. The most shallow hole on Alchemist to date is at 500 meters vertical depth. So there's opportunity to bring that closer to surface. But again, the width's comparable to the size of the system that we're in a Descendant. We're prioritizing that. And the targets that we're seeing in terms of the multiple data sets at Odin, Ra, and Poseidon are indicating that it comes much closer to the surface.
And which felsic volcanic rock is your primary host rock?
They're hosted in the felsic. So the sequence in terms of the alteration package, what we're looking for is typically you'll hit your sericite altered felsic volcanics, and then you'll move into your chlorite alteration, and then that chlorite alteration, which is again about temperature, that's sort of the hottest part of the system is your chlorite. Then you come out of that, and then you go right into your massive sulfides. And then depending on where you are in the system, your hanging wall rocks are different. Over by Cabin is called an andesite flow.
Okay, here we go. So could you summarize how you, of course, this could depend on results, but at least how you're thinking now, how you will allocate your 5,000 meters and in what order you will do the program?
The first hole right here is budgeted for roughly about 700 meters, and that's going to be into multiple different data sets that are supporting that area. But there's a 3-line VTEM anomaly that sits right along the shoreline, and a lot of these VMS deposits sit along shorelines of lakes like Trout Lake, like Rainbow, like Cabin, like Descendant, for example, like the Centennial Mine to the south, the Sourdough deposit to the south. Many of them sit along this because that's where the glaciation would have occurred and would have eroded away the alteration, because that's the softest rock. And then that the glacier that erodes away that alteration then ultimately leaves the shallow lake in place. So that target up there could be potentially near surface, supported again by an airborne anomaly, a surface pulse anomaly, some borehole EM anomalies from some holes drilled to the south, one of which was ours, the other which was an inmet hole drilled in 1996. And then we also have that MT data set that's mapping the alteration between the Poseidon target right here, this horizon, or the Rainbow horizon, and then the Pine Bay horizon. So that's what you're seeing here is the alteration between the Pine Bay horizon here and then the Rainbow horizon over here on this descendant line, which you can see right here. So again, this would be Rainbow horizon at surface that I kind of showed. And then this over here would be where the Pine Bay horizon is. And then this is mapping the alteration between those two horizons. And that's simply where you've got low concentrations of your disseminated pyrite or chalcopyrite is what will give you a resistivity low. And so that's like a halo that's around a massive deposit, a massive sulfide deposit. It's like an indirect vectoring approach because, again, BMS deposits have a short strike. They aren't super wide, and so your footprint is very small, particularly when they're sitting near vertical like they're sitting at Pine Bay. And so what we've brought in, which has led to our success over the past several years, is a non-traditional tool in terms of our vectoring approach, where traditionally you would try to use electromagnetics as in to go directly towards your conductive source, which would be your copper or your copper-bearing minerals. What we've now elected to do, because they're sit near vertical, so your footprint's so much smaller, is to go and map what surrounds that massive sulfide deposit as a larger target to get us into that system. So I know I kind of got long-winded there, and I'm sorry about that, but that is the focus as initially phase one. First hole here is 700 meters targeting Poseidon to go across and test all those different targets and that favorable geology along strike from Rainbow. And then we'll immediately be pulling the drill over to Descendant. And Descendant is, again, going to be about a 7-week hole. It's a deep hole, over 2 kilometers depth. And these things, while they are deep drilling, we can drill these deposits out very effectively. Actually, uniquely enough, we're looking to bring in some tools that are cutting edge out of Norway right now, and it'd actually be on a trial basis because it's not commercially available. But guiding drill holes at depth, but
Like
again,
borehole electromagnetics, or
no, it's for drilling, actually, for fundamentally drilling it out. When you get at depth, you want to get wedges and cut wedges off the off of a parent hole, so you can drill as many as 7, 8 holes, cuts on a deposit, or as you're drilling out a deposit off of one deep parent hole. And
is
what
that
we're
what you're
looking
going
at,
to do at Descendant with your one hole?
well, initially we're going to drill the first hole, and we got to see what we hit first, and then we'd certainly use that as a parent hole to wedge. Yes.
Okay, smart.
But I mean, you're looking at, while you're drilling a deeper hole, and so you're constantly incrementally go higher as you get deeper. When you've already drilled a parent hole, you can cut and make several cuts off of the parent hole, which is, in a blended cost incrementally, it's not that too much more expensive, right? Because you're saving 1,000 meters of drilling, even though as you come down, yeah, your incremental cost will be a lot per meter. But when you blend that as if you were drilling a new hole, it's actually quite competitive.
Those wedges, I mean, when will those be put in? And is that part of the 5,000 meter program?
No, it's not part of the 5,000 meter program. When would they be put in? They'd be put out when you want to start making cuts. If you have a pierce point, I don't know if I'm going to show you again. Like a lot of these holes on Rainbow, you drill a hole down here, and then you can wedge, and start wedging up. So let me see if I can zoom in on this real quick. Excuse the granular detail, but you can see, we got an intersection in the parent hole of PVM 113 here in the orange zone, because there's multiple lenses. So each one of these pierce points is a different color for the different lens it hit. But you can see 113 hit here, and then we wedged off of here and hit 113 hit here again in the orange zone. And you can see we drilled another 113 hit up here. So that one hole that we drilled had 3 different cuts off of it across your deposits. Instead of drilling, 3 different parent holes, on this instance, you can see the 3 different cuts that we made off of that.
That makes sense. So in other words, first you will do Poseidon. Was it 2 holes at Poseidon, then 1 large 2 kilometer or upwards of 2 kilometers at Descendent?
Yeah, it was 1 hole at Poseidon, 1 hole at Descendant, 1 hole at Odin, 1 hole at Ra.
So in other words, all holes will be, I mean, at least at Ra and Poseidon and at Odin, the holes will be at least 700 meters.
Up to 700 meters.
And so if we start talking about Poseidon, you've already outlined why you think it's an attractive target. What alteration packages are you seeing or have seen, and how large is it?
The alteration package, you can't see it because there's a lake.
But is it all under the lake, or is it sort of some on the coast, that alteration?
There is alteration. You can see it at surface on some outcropping, but the big alteration package that would be leading into the deposit, if you were drilling it from east to west, is all underneath the lake. So you're not going to be able to map that alteration package. It's just like Rainbow. You're not going to be able to map Rainbow alteration very much at surface because it's all underneath the lake. But that's why the lake is there, is the glacier would come, and the glaciers will slide or eat away, erode at the softest rock. Your softest rock is going to be your highly altered rock that's broken up, as opposed to your massive rock that's, fully competent. So that's why you see in Flin in this area, because of the glaciation, and the lakes typically oftentimes are coinciding with the deposits along the shoreline, is because the glacier would have eaten the softest part of the deposit or the system, which is the alteration, leaving the deposit near the shoreline, because the glacier wouldn't eat at the harder rock.
So I mean, you have a large is it VTEM anomaly? So it is a conductive body. If there's not copper, what else could it be?
What it could be, it could also be in terms of false conductors. Not in this area, it won't be in particular, but it could be graphite in a lot of these systems. Graphitic argillites oftentimes can be in these systems. In fact, the Trout Lake discovery was sandwiched between some graphitic argillite features. The Centennial Mine to the south has got graphitic argillites. There are graphitic argillites to the west of Rainbow. So graphitic argillites can be conductive, or are conductive, and could be your false conductor. You could also have pyrrhotite, which would be a barren, highly conductive sulfide. And then your other conductor would be chalcopyrite, which would be great, which is the copper-bearing sulfide or mineral. And those would be really the two main conductors. Is you're going to have pyrrhotite, or you're going to have graphite or chalcopyrite. So in this instance, you could have some pyrrhotite that would be the conductor, or the old adage from a geophysical standpoint is you're really looking for pyrrhotite that has enough chalcopyrite to make a mine. So it depends on how you look at it, but your false conductor could be pyrrhotite.
So this body or conductive body, could you show an image where you see that's, I mean, is it sitting on the same sort of I don't know, strike as the rainbow horizon, or how does that interact?
The conductor, the airborne conductor, sits right here along the shoreline. Rainbow sits right here along the shoreline. Rainbow you can actually not see in the airborne data at all. This anomaly, compared to other anomalies in terms of the big spikes, is much more subtle. But again, that's just big formational conductors will look a lot larger on your system, right? So yeah, it's a 3-line anomaly that sits right along this shoreline, along strike from the rainbow deposit to the south. And then that alteration, which you're seeing, that pink or that big red blob, is mapping from here to here. So it'd be from the edge of the shoreline, right here is where that blob is.
And this horizon of massive sulfide, yeah, what's the conceptual geometry of this at Poseidon?
Well, we have to hit it to tell you, but in terms of conceptually, the drill targets, the EM conductor has got a strike extent of 300 meters. So if you were to imagine that with similar dimensions of rainbow, which has a strike about 125 to 150 meters, you could theoretically say that Poseidon could immediately, if you use the same dimensions of rainbow, are a 10 million ton target. That's forward-looking statement, and that's just again based only on the strike extent of the VTEM conductor relative to the strike extent that you have a rainbow and the tonnage you have a rainbow, and assuming similar widths. Forward-looking statement.
Yeah, I will make sure the viewers know that this is a forward-looking there will be a lot of forward-looking statements today.
You gotta look forward to make discoveries, and you have to have a target for what you're looking at. So, I mean, there is, it is a substantial target that would certainly be a meaningful outcome to the project, and of course to the shareholders of the company.
So then, Descendent, you outlined why it is an attractive target, but so. Yeah, so firstly, the alteration pack, it's 10 times larger as Rainbow. What type of alteration are you seeing? And why is size important when it comes to alteration?
You're seeing significant sericite and then chloride alteration as you lead in to the Descendent cabin horizon. And again, the envelope of that alteration package is 700 by 1100 meters at surface over here, which is why you have so much historic drilling in this area, is because of that alteration. But again, if you don't know where that horizon is, because everything also sits vertical, and you don't understand the stratigraphy or the pattern of the rocks, where they sit in order, you could be drilling a ton of holes out there, but you could be shutting them down short. And a prime example of that is, Placer Dome. When we interpreted Placer Dome's drilling, it seemed like they potentially didn't know where the horizon was, based upon what our interpretation was, and that's when we deepened Placer Dome's holes and hit that discovery hole in 2016. Now, it took a number of years to replicate that, now hitting the Descendent discovery, but that's an example of how you can have, in terms of best-in-class exploration group, funds aren't an issue, technical ability is not an issue, it's just time and understanding of a specific area that was ultimately the contributing factor to why they didn't make the discovery. And the same thing is on INMET. INMET followed up on Placer Dome's work about a year and a half of work later, and they were just building upon that. And then they made the same assumptions that Placer made, assuming that all the Placer Dome's work was correct. And I think, again, while that was okay, I guess, it was certainly not prudent, and was also led them to being short. Because you could say, okay, if they'd had that sniff, would they have kept drilling? Well, I could tell you if Placer Dome had hit the hit we hit by deepening the hole, they certainly would have kept drilling. If INMET had hit the hit that we hit when we extended their hole, that one's more arguable because it's a smaller intercept. But certainly understanding the system that you're in, where you are within that system, is critical in making these discoveries.
There is a clear relationship between size of the alteration and also ultimately size of the deposit that's down there.
Yeah, typically, yes. The other mindset could have been that because you're seeing that alteration system at surface, that everything got eroded away at surface, which is why you're seeing that at depth. But I believe that based upon the results to date, we've really gone a long way of proving the ongoing exploration thesis of ourselves and numerous others that came before us by hitting the high-grade wide intervals that we've now intersected at depth. that in fact the system is inverted, everything is overturned, and therefore your deep-seated massive sulfide deposit would be preserved intact at depth, which would be what is represented by what we're intersecting at Descendent today.
So could you explain the sort of the thesis that, or why so this horizon of mineralization could be larger as it sits at the nose of a fold? And I think you have a good slide for this.
Certainly, we can get science a little more sciencey on this. These systems are all interpreted to be the same event, and then a subsequent event would have come in and really kind of morphed it. But essentially, this would be the cabin pine Descendant horizon. Excuse my poor control of the art here, the mouse. And then you come back over here, and then this would be your Pine Bay horizon. And then between the Pine Bay, which is why you're seeing that big blob on the Descendant MT survey line, you have the Rainbow horizon. And then potentially there's another one called the Odin horizon. Again, excuse the lack of steadiness. And then, of course, you come over here and you have the Alchemist horizon. So you've got tight folding, and we're looking for this same period of time that's hosting all this mineralized event, which is why you have the alteration over here leading into cabin Descendant. The potential, again, that this mineralization picks up at depth, and then you get a big double the accumulation at the nose of the fold. And then, of course, that's why you're seeing the alteration then picking back up over on this side between Pine Bay and Rainbow.
And the difference between Descent and all the other targets is why is that just alteration is larger? What is that makes you think that this is a much larger target than the others?
Just your alteration package is much bigger.
Okay, so that's the reason. Yeah.
Well, you're in a huge felsic volcanic rock package, and then you have this giant alteration system, which is your plumbing system to the volcanic event. So the bigger your volcano, the bigger the volcanic event. It's like comparing Mount St. Helens to a much smaller volcanic event over on like the big island of Hawaii or something like that. I mean, you can have a big volcanic event, and then you can have a much, much bigger volcanic event. So Rainbow might be like Kauai, and Descendant could be like the big island of Hawaii. I mean, a much, much larger volcanic event nearby. And actually, uniquely enough, if you look at Hawaii is stacked in a sequence similar to the kind of the growth fault sequence that you see at Pine Bay.
What could be the size of the prize?
Would certainly be in the realm of tens of millions of tons, based upon the size of the alteration, the width of the mineralization, and again the system that you're in. That's what the target that Placer had. That's the target that Inmet had, and certainly we're not looking to drill deep holes like this with the expectation that we're going to hit something small.
So you drilled 2 holes, 111 and 112. 111 hit 7 meters of 1.7% copper equivalent. Quite nice, but not enough to. Obviously we're not in the guts of the system. Yeah, what's your thesis? How deep were these holes?
Yeah, so 111 was roughly around 1,300 meters vertical depth. And I would say 112 is around 1,450 meters vertical depth. And we're hitting mineralization from just above the 900 meter level, call it 850, all the way now down to 1,400.
Did they miss sort of the center of the horizon, or what's your thesis where they are in the system?
We're at the top of the system is where you'd imagine, based upon this. These 2 holes will indicate you're at the top of a new lens, based upon what you see at this Rainbow. Rainbow right here, within the first 200 meters of Rainbow, your grade distribution is similar to what you're seeing at Descendant. You're at 1.55% copper equivalent. As you get deeper into the system, which is the basis of the step-out hole that we're drilling, right now we're essentially proposing that we're drilling a hole from here and stepping out and drilling a hole down here in the system. This is where you get the high grade portion. So you're going to get zinc gold transitioning to high grade copper in the heart of the system. And then that means you're towards the heat source. So at some point down here, you'll have your vent. Imagine like this is your seafloor. This is the ocean seafloor. This is the vent, and then this is the volcanic event spewing the massive sulfide, rich, copper zinc bearing mineralization. The closer you are to the vent is the closer you are to get to the high grade copper. The further away is where you're going to get your zinc gold dominant part of the system. So we're no different in our interpretation here at Descendent. We're at the top of the system, and the deeper we go, we're vectoring towards the high-grade proximal part of the copper-rich bearing part of the system. And then eventually you go deep enough where you might hit the fold nose, where it folds back over, and then you get a real wide interval, a super high-grade copper, over 100-meter width or something. Crazy good times like that.
I mean, 2,000-meter hole, yeah, that's a deep hole.
I think that, yes, it is deep, but I think you need to put things in context. The world-class Kid Creek mine is being mined over 3 kilometers underground today. If you look at one of our peers, Foran, that's sitting in a different area, really due to the west in Saskatchewan, their new Tesla discovery, which they're targeting 40 million tons on, that starts at 900 meters vertical depth. Right? If I can tell you there's other holes being drilled in Flin, Flon today where the target is at 2 kilometers underground. So deep exploration is going to be a theme going forward, particularly when you're going for these very high grade VMS systems where you have the model. If you look at any of the major mines, whether it be Trout Lake, the original Flin ore body, 777, or Lawler, they all extend at depth.
What does the success look like in drill hole?
Wide interval of high-grade copper.
How high? How good?
Over 3% copper.
Okay, and wide is like what, over 15 meters or?
I think 8 to 10 meters would be nice, but I would say the more the merrier. Certainly, our expectation is that you can get a very wide interval of high grade based on the system that we're in, or we wouldn't be drilling the hole to begin with.
So then, what is the likelihood that the deposit is there, but that you don't hit it? That maybe it's 20 meters to the left or right?
I certainly hope that we don't get into that situation. But in terms of if that were to happen, you'd have a borehole EM survey down the hole, and you'd have a big off-hole conductor that would point you off-hole to the north or to the south, or below and to the north as a vector towards the high grade. But I think in a situation where you're on a known plunge line, I mean, you can clearly see there's a cap and deposit. You come vertically below, which has been a theme. You're hitting more material. You just got to pinch out right here, and then we're back onto it down here at depth. So again, if we need to go down the plunge line, drill the hole, and see what the outcome of that hole is. But aside from all this, we're not a one-hole company. I want to also cater to that. We are a company that's got numerous discoveries, numerous targets, and this is one target that we're stepping out on a known discovery that we've just made in an area that's very, very attractive to us. So this isn't like a binary outcome where this hole doesn't come to fruition, that the entire investment thesis for the asset is suddenly null and void. That's certainly not the case.
No, that's good to point out. So if it's something significant, will you dedicate all your remaining meters to Descendent and skip Ra and Odin?
I don't believe so, but I think that we got to take the campaign as the campaign comes to us, right? I think that if you look at any campaign, I can tell you numerous discoveries will never hit on the first drill hole. Rainbow was hit on the last target. We were trying, it was our first priority target area, but it was the last target we could end up drilling, and we were 3 holes into it before we hit. And truly, I would say probably 99 out of 100 probably wouldn't have drilled the 3rd hole to hit that we drilled to hit. And so if you look at Alchemist came late in the campaign, the Descendent was the last hole of the last campaign. And by and large, when you're running an exploration company, you drill all your targets in the campaign. Because more often than not, your number one target isn't the home run. and you need to drill the targets that you've derived. Trout Lake discovery was like the 9th hole into the campaign they hit. Iotogu, I think the final hole that finally clicked on Iotogu was like the 414th hole. So the fact that we're hitting as early as we're hitting, and we have a very good track record now of a high hit rate, I think is showing that the model is working, and now it's just further refining that and then using that tool set in the model to scale up the discoveries to critical mass, which we're very close, if not already there, with what we have. And now it's really, what's beyond the 10-year mine life, and then can we double our initial throughput, which is the focal point of this campaign, was stepping out on a big discovery at depth at Descendent, and then trying to hit another near-surface discovery at the other defined target areas that we've announced.
Just summarize Ra and Odin. Yeah, what sort of rationale for these targets?
So in terms of Ra and Odin, Odin is supported by a big resistivity low isoshell, which you can see right here as an example of this large resistivity isoshell. It also is supported by a borehole EM anomaly, as well as MT data. So the MT, again, the IP is mapping your alteration. You're just like the IP mapped the alteration around Rainbow here. Then that's what we're looking for, the IP as well as the MT. And then we also have, again, a borehole EM that we're targeting that supports something along that area. There's also excellent geology. Along strike to the north on Odin, we had 0.5 meter of over 5 gram per ton gold and 2 ounce silver. On these VMS horizons, you want to see elevated silver as a big trace kind of indicator mineral that you're on a productive horizon. So there's a number of multiple data sets, both geophysical, geochemical, and of course the good old-fashioned geology, that are highlighting a potential of something to sit on this horizon for Odin. And then target area Ra is similar, which it's along strike to the south of the Pine Bay deposit. It also supported by IP, it's supported by MT, it's supported by borehole EM, and then there's a surface pulse EM anomaly around that area. And of course, geology, in the very limited drill holes that we have, we've drilled 2 holes in the area, is very, very positive. So again, typically you don't hit a VMS deposit on your first drill hole in an area. It usually takes 2 to 3, and that's part of the vectoring process. But again, these holes, these target areas have been refined with 1 or 2 drill holes in the area historically or in the modern time that also support things. So again, geology, geophysics, and geochemistry all working collectively together that are refining these target areas.
What metallurgical test work has been done on the Pine Bay project?
Metallurgical test work hasn't been done by Callinex per se. I will say that metallurgical work was done back in the 70s on the Pine Bay deposit when they were first seeing the shaft take a bulk sample. The North Star mine, part of the same system, didn't have any metallurgical issues when it went to production. Same thing with Donjon over here, as well as the past producing Centennial mine to the south. So again, in terms of future met work, we'll look to do that potentially in conjunction with sending some of that material to be tested locally if possible. So met work is to come, but it hasn't been done to date.
Perfect. In terms of recoveries, I mean, are they usually above 80, or what are past producing mines having?
They vary, but you have high recovery rates on like 80% on copper, and then a bit higher, I think, for the zinc. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head.
That's fine. That's all right. And Alberts Lake, you doubled your land package earlier this year through an option agreement. What's the terms of that option agreement?
It's a 5-year option, roughly $600,000 total compensation, staggered over those 5 years. We can repay that at any given time that we choose to do so, so it can be accelerated. It's an all-stock transaction. There are no minimum spends, so there's no, we need to spend XYZ dollars by XYZ date. And again, it is subject to the 1.5% NSR. Half of that can be bought back for $500,000, and then any other subsequent smaller NSRs that might sit anywhere on the property. So that's the Alberts Lake option agreement.
What previous work has been done, exploration work has been done on the property?
So there has been some historic exploration work, all very, very shallow, the most significant of which are the Amulet deposit, which is a small high-grade copper VMS deposit that actually sits right around over here. So that's interpreted to be on the Rainbow Horizon. Then there's also the Leo Lake deposit that sits up here on the area, and then there's the Alberts Lake, with the shear-hosted gold deposit. Again, any exploration on the property has only been done very, very shallow. The holes that you see drilled, for example, an area we like, we're looking at 47-meter holes or a 300-meter hole. That was like by Hudbay that was drilled in like the 50s. But again, you're testing very, very shallow, and a lot of this work was done predating any modern understanding of VMS deposits, certainly without the understanding where these horizons sit and how the deposits sit, and kind of it all holds together, and before the advent of borehole electromagnetics. So again, very sparsely explored.
So what work will you be doing over the next year to make some of these targets drill ready?
So there's going to be some mapping work. We've already had some boots on the ground, but we're looking to potentially have the government come out and map, because there has been actually a fire about 3 days after we announced the acquisition of the option agreement. There was a significant wildfire that wiped out pretty much the entirety of the Alberts Lake area that's under option. So that's going to lead to a lot of opportunities with the upcoming mapping campaign. We're looking to hopefully have the government facilitate next spring, and then going through the data and pulling together the data is going to really, I think, some low-hanging fruit, as one of my colleagues likes to say, will emerge, and I think will open up for a lot of near-surface exploration opportunities, which you never probably expect to see for a camp that's been explored for a century, but it really hasn't when you look at huge gaps of times where there's been completely no exploration, particularly over the past 30, 40 years. As you see at Pine Bay, and certainly even kind of in a better case for us on the area to the north.
Could you clarify, would you at some point in the future to take Pine Bay into production, or are you here to do the exploration and then hopefully sell the project?
No, we're certainly advancing Pine Bay and the project to a production decision, and the intent to take it to production. Now, if something happens between now and then that changes that outcome, certainly that's a part of the cycle and the business that we're in, with the explorers oftentimes being taken out long before they transition to a production scenario. But we do have the technical capabilities to facilitate that growth with Peter. Behind the scenes, we also brought on the former senior mine geologist engineer 777, as well as the environmental firm that did a lot of the environmental baseline studies and stuff for the past producing mines in the area. So we're going to continue to advance the projects, and if something happens between now and then, we'll address that on a case by case.
Would you say that now, as 777 mine shut down, that there's a push among the local communities to sort of fast track Pine Bay into production? Or
yeah, no, certainly. I think the opportunity, if you look on average in Canada, it's over 18 years from discovery to production. Flin, Flon, and Manitoba has always been super supportive of mining, particularly in a situation now where the future and the livelihood of the community is in a bit of jeopardy with the shutdown of that major vehicle for economic prosperity for the community. So again, I think that we'd fall in line with that, and we're definitely taking the steps to fast track with the advanced exploration permit, which is part of the permitting process that both the Reed Lake, Lawler, and a number of the past producing mines in the more modern history have gone through. And in addition to that, I will mention that we have received over $1 million of government funding via grants for the potential for our discoveries to revitalize infrastructure in northern Manitoba, which is the sole focus of the MMDF fund that granted us those numerous grants.
That's great. And so, in other words, you have good infrastructure, you have also access to skilled labor in the community. that leaves us with, why was Hudbay's 777 mine shut down?
They depleted the resource.
Okay, well that's it.
I mean, not everything lasts forever, you know.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, they have a 5,500 ton per day idle plant now in Flin. What similarities and difference did their ore have to, well, I can't call it ore yet, but your mineralized material at Rainbow?
It'd be very similar mineralization. So, you know, I think that it could be safe to say that, you know, obviously we need to do future testing in the lab specifically for that setup. But based upon our knowledge of the deposits in the area, that there wouldn't be any issue processing the material at that infrastructure in Flin Flon or even in Snow Lake.
That ore that you will be taking out from Rainbow, will that be processed in the 77 mill?
That remains unseen. I think the potential that it gets processed at the 777 concentrator in Flin Flon is certainly a very real potential. But I think there's multiple potential outcomes that are all very favorable. But I think certainly the path to the quickest production scenario would be the ability to access that mill and, you know, process the material there.
But so then, how is your relation with Hudbay Minerals?
I mean, you can ask them, but I think we have a very favorable relationship with Hudbay. I think, you know, we certainly have personnel that has really expanded from different areas of Hudbay's operations, whether it was senior management or exploration in the past. And, you know, in terms of our own relationships, we've maintained those relationships with either themselves or myself as being head here at Callinex for, you know, 10 years now. And then I think those relationships also are established beyond not only, you know, Hudbay, but other mid-tier and senior producers that are out there that certainly have, you know, North America on their radar. And I think that as the days go by and the world turns, there's certainly more and more folks out there that are certainly supportive of advancing a project in North America above a lot of other places in the world today.
In other words, you would structure some kind of I don't know, toll milling agreement or JV or something like that if you were together with them to advance towards production, I assume.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, you know, we're a company that's open to collaborating, and I certainly believe that Hudbay is a company that's open to collaborating. Hudbay has shown the propensity to collaborate with others in the past, and, you know, I don't see why it would be any different with Callinex. Callinex has the most advanced base metal resource in Manitoba, and it's actually, in terms of copper resource, the only maiden copper resource announced in the past several years in the entire province. So it's ideally located. You know, it wasn't quantified until recently in terms of the size and where we're at. You kind of saw that when we went through the historic mines in the area. And we would fit nicely under many potential outcomes, I think, for that infrastructure, whether, you know, they are looking to reprocess the tailings, whether that works out or not. You know, I think any outcome is a positive outcome for Callinex and where we're at.
You will do the bulk, take the bulk sample on Rainbow. What is the next step in terms of actually permitting it? And also maybe if you would do some development for...
Well, the next step is to get your advanced exploration permit. So the advanced exploration permit, you know, we've done the baseline water studies. That's been completed, and there's a number of studies that facilitate that process. The heritage impact assessment, where that on-site development work would be done for accessing both of those deposits. Socioeconomic impact assessment, those type of things need to be done and are being done. In relation to also the engineering work, the reclamation procedures, all that gets done. Then you submit that to the government for the advanced exploration permit. That timeline, I think we're looking at earmarking to receive that by next August. And then that subsequent to that is when you can look into developing and actually ramping out to the deposit. Ramping down to the deposit, that would take about roughly 7 months in total to ramp down and access the deposit around the 100-meter level. But all those things, again, need to be ironed out and looked at in further detail. And this is a timely process. The big thing is that it's a low-cost item, which is actually being funded by that grant that we received, or one of the grants we received, that really puts us in a position to start development work when we're ready to do so. And then as we're doing that development work, we can also be submitting for the environmental license, which is, when you put a project description in together, submit that, and then you get your full-blown production permits thereafter.
What's the timeline on the environmental license?
Well, I mean, it depends on every case-by-case basis, but I think the two last cases in Manitoba were very quite promising. The Reed Lake mine, that was a permit within a provincial park, and they did that in about a year and a half, 2 years' time. And then Lawler was actually, I think, a record in Canada. The project description to receiving their permits is about 12 months turnaround. And of course, Hudbay's got a lot of experience with that. I can tell you that we've retained the same group of people in terms of AECOM that worked with Hudbay on Lawler and Reed Lake and the new Britannia mill. The engineer that we're working with also worked on permitting for the new Britannia mill, as well as the recent advanced exploration permit granted to another company in Manitoba. So again, we always try to find the best in class to come get that work done, because that's going to, again, the work's going to be done the right way, which is number one and most important thing. And then beyond that, it brings a lot of credibility with investors, policymakers, stakeholders, everyone involved, knowing that this isn't Mickey Mouse together in terms of who's doing the work, is done the work, done it right, and has done it numerous times before.
So say a year from now, you will still have plenty of exploration to do. How do you think that would compete for capital against development activities?
Exploration is always going to take we're an exploration company. So while we've talked some about development, I think the real reason, besides being in a situation where you can have, us transition to a producer very quickly, the biggest thing is how do we transition to a very, very major discovery where you have, again, real scale, and then you've got very long life of mine, and that's the focal point of the company, and that's where 90% of the capex of the company is going forward, and that's the strength of the company.
You have two other projects, Bathurst and Buckens. What's your plan for these projects?
So and I can get long-winded about everything, but very excited about those assets. Bathurst is a PEA state zinc-lead asset. Point Leamington is an advanced stage gold, copper, zinc deposit, pit constrained in a mineral lease in Newfoundland, Canada. Both around 20 million tons, and those will look to JV out or partner with the right groups on as things advance. And I think we're getting to that stage. I think things are certainly heating up. So that's something that I think we'll look to execute on, I would say, over the coming year to 2 years at the very latest. As I think this market is starting to mature, you're seeing a lot of activity, and with that is going to be a lot more interest that'll kind of trickle down, because if we're seeing people get excited on some of these big acquisitions, that's all getting people excited further down the pipeline. So those assets we're not going to be spending Callinex capital on, but we look to leverage the existing relationship we have, the exploration upside, and the unique nature of those deposits and where they sit to create value for Callinex shareholders moving forward.
So then, could you summarize the key catalysts for this year?
So the key catalysts are going to be, number one, exploration is going to be big. Exploration results and drilling as we drive the project forward and unlock value through new discoveries and expanding on the discoveries that we've made to date. Also, the milestones and the strides that we'll be making on the permitting process for the advanced exploration permit that we're gearing up to work on will really de-risk the assets in a different way that exploration typically just cannot do, and add a tremendous amount of value moving forward. And then at some point, as we expand to the north, I think we can unlock a lot of value as we begin generating targets and look to test some as we move the company forward and kind of get that in the exploration pipeline for everyone.
So then, as a CEO and also a large shareholder of Callinex Mines, where do you envision Callinex Mines in 3 years?
Callinex Mines in 3 years could very likely be in very, very long in the development stage, with production imminent, as we drill out and define some major resource base on the property, that will really kind of supplant Pine Bay as a future production scenario for what I'd like to believe is the next several generations of miners. The area and the pedigree of the rocks in that area facilitate that, and we're just now getting kind of the exploration that's unlocking that value, which typically takes a number of years, as you can know from numerous examples historically and as a present.